Hello, family. Welcome to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I'm your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. So, overview, Brazil mutes Musk, hilarious, right? And what happens with Netanyahu and the hostages and those who have just passed away? So, before we get into it, I got some quick hits for you because God knows there's a lot going on and I have a lot to say. So, for one, can everybody tap into the Paralympics, please? This is one of the most chaotic, fantastic, confusing, and unbelievable athletic feats I've ever seen in my life. Like, I think when we think Paralympics, right, we're thinking sports based on fairness, right? These are the folks who have what we consider like disabilities or impairments, and it's really a sport about being fair, but it's actually bloodthirsty. These people are out for glory, and they're not here to play. I watched a blind football match. You heard me. A blind football match. The ball has a bell in it, the soccer ball, and they're all blindfolded, and they are going after that ball like their lives depend on it, and the goalies are nearsighted. If that doesn't sound like something you want to watch, I'll sell you on this next point, okay? Table tennis. One guy is playing table tennis. That's ping pong for my unelevated friends. Table tennis. One guy's got two arms. The other guy, no arms. No arms. He was playing table tennis at the Olympics with no arms. He had the paddle in his mouth, and he fucking rocked the house. I was like, there are no rules to it. However awesome you think the Olympics were, this is something else. They have another sport in the Paralympics called murder ball. Murder ball. It is wheelchair rugby, and they are killers. They're killers. They're bloodthirsty, and they're there for glory and gold and nothing else. They're not there to make friends. I love it. It's wild. Tune in. I've been having a great time. The ways that the rules are designed, like sometimes you are not disabled enough to participate. Or sometimes, but one thing I love about this sport is there's never two disabled. Everybody who wants to win and works hard at it can fucking win, and I'm here for it. So anyway, give that a go. I would love to play some murder ball one day. Number 2, hotel strikes. This is huge because Labor Day, this will come out on Labor Day. We're seeing major hotel strikes across the U.S., okay? So the initial strikes, which mostly involved the Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt properties, will be going on for 3 days. I love that we can all get together on a Labor Day and hang out and maybe eat a little hot dogs or barbecue or whatever the hell people do here in the United States. But remember that Labor Day is for the people. So in the last 3 days, more than 10,000 workers walked out at hotels in San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, Honolulu, Kauai, Boston, Seattle, and Greenwich, Connecticut. That last one took me for a loop. Turn up Greenwich, right? They did that earlier in the day. So the strikes could spread out past the weekend to other communities, including New Haven, Baltimore, Oakland. And, we've seen, 24 properties hit as a result of this with 23,000 rooms, according to Unite Here. So that's a national hospitality union, right? So they've got over, 275,000 members, the majority of whom are women and people of color. So this matters so much right now. I mean, not just because of the obvious implications, but labor's been attacked on every fundamental level you can imagine and took major hits because of Trump's presidency and COVID. So according to this particular union, the National Hospitality Union suffered huge losses of membership during the height of the pandemic. And it said that its workers were striking for higher pay, increased staffing, and reduced workloads. Think about the last episode where we talked about these recalls, right? Partly that's because of Trump rolling back FDA regulations, right? And rolling back the regulators. And we know that they are firing people and dumping on more responsibilities for fewer people and then blaming those folks when things go wrong. So there was mold and there was all these nasty things going on in these factories. Well, these workers are being exploited. They're getting shit tons of work piled up on them and then getting blamed when things don't go well. And this was already a problem that got exacerbated during the pandemic. So it's not just our attitudes and our sense of hope that diminished post-pandemic. I'm just joking, you guys. We come here for that. We get that. We give that to each other. But we really haven't recovered in any way on a society level post-pandemic. And I think we're seeing over and over again how much loss that time represents. What is so moving to me is that has not meant that people stop fighting. They're still out there. They're still fighting. They're not the stories that we get to hear all the time, but they're there when you go looking for them. And that's my job. So the union has accused hotels of using COVID-era lockdowns as a pretext to permanently cut costs by axing employees and suspending guest services. These workers say, I think the fuck not, right? So because that union has lost income and work, they are now saying they're enduring painful working conditions, and they're about to change all of that. And in whichever way you can, support the damn strike. Let's go. Next on the lineup, Brazil mutes Musk. I'm thrilled. Okay, so a judge in Brazil, right? Don't forget, this is Lula's Brazil, right? That's what I'm about, right? So the judge says, you got to curb your misinformation if you want Twitter, or X or whatever, I'm never saying that, if you want Twitter to remain in the country. Musk says, I think not. I'm going to do what I want. I love that my app proliferates nonsense and disinformation and lies and just really is about my agenda. You're not going to tell me what to do. And Lula and the judicial system said, okay, so you don't want to be here. And Musk was like, you want me. I don't want you. You want me in your country because I am Elon Musk and I have X. And they said, I think the fuck not. And out he goes. Twitter is now banned in Brazil. And for anyone who uses it, you're looking at around the equivalent of $8,900 US if you get caught. Now, as much as I am satisfied with this, and I am because I really despise Elon Musk. He's the worst kind of person, and however bad I thought he was, right? I mean, because we all have this default position on billionaires. What he's actually doing, how he's trying to stoke hatred in the United Kingdom, which you can hear on a past episode, how he's trying to capitalize it and create essentially the conditions for a civil war because it means immense profit for him. He is trying to say now that Lula and the government down there is totalitarian. Imagine the hypocrisy of saying, I'm against a totalitarian government while forcibly trying to push in Donald Trump. Just like literally just stepping on election fraud, right? Like he's step dancing on election fraud to try to support Donald Trump's case, right, for president. And the reason, I just want to reiterate that the core reason why Twitter is banned right now in Brazil is because they asked him to curb the misinformation machine. They said there's too many lies, there's too much discord, it's rife with disinformation and misinformation. You've got to curb it. And he said no, and now he's trying to attack Brazil. If you want to see a show about Brazil and look at all those fine people, get on Twitter. I mean, don't literally, but it's hilarious because it's literally all he's talking about. Just Twitter. Sorry, on Twitter, it's just the UK and Brazil. Lula, as far as it can happen in Brazil, is a left-leaning government, or Brazil's currently under Lula. It's kind of cool, but I will say this. As much as it thrills me that Elon Musk loses, and will every time, it does upset me that it's the people who do, right? Billionaires can't get their shit together or try to exploit and squeeze every last dime out of people. But the ones who lost, there are folks in Brazil, I'm sure, who love that platform, who use it, who maybe even make some money off of it. I don't know. Content creators or influencers or whoever who use Twitter or Twitch or anything like that to try to like boost their following or information share, they're the folks who lose. So while these billionaires are playing with our lives and playing with our livelihoods, when they refuse to do the right thing, it's regular folks like us who lose out the most. So I'm thrilled that he may suffer because of this, but my heart is with anyone who felt like, that was a meaningful app to them. And I do hope the conditions change because like, fuck Musk, but never fuck you. You know what I mean? Never, right? Also, can we just take a minute? Like, we know why billionaires are terrible and how exploitative they are, but just think about this. Just think of a guy you know. This is why I really don't like billionaires. Like, just think of any guy you know, right? Not a boyfriend, not a best friend, just a guy that you know. Now give him $10 billion. Doesn't that annoy the shit out of you? Like, is he a good guy now that he's got $10 billion? Or is the absolute worst parts of him going to just jump out? You know it. You know it when I said it. As soon as I said it, you thought, John? Absolutely fucking not. John with $10 billion? Chris with 10? No, that's exactly it. Elon Musk is one of the biggest man babies on the planet. But when billionaires throw temper tantrums, mad people lose out. And that's my beef, ultimately, is like the concentration of power and the ways that we keep looking at each other. Anyway, very, very quickly, affirmative action. Remember that when the Supreme Court overturned affirmative action, and largely because a group of largely Asian students, right, wrote this and made this whole campaign to see it through, and were saying that they were losing out because black people were getting in. Well, did it work? Did it work? Are more Asian students now in Ivy League institutions now that affirmative action is out of action? So the data is just starting to roll in since the Supreme Court ruled that ending affirmative action, right, in post-secondary institutions. So we've got some initial data that's coming in from Amherst College and Tufts University, and the only thing that they can point to definitively is that there were drops in the number of black students, right? So after the Supreme Court ends this, the picture's super murky still, but I'm looking at the folks who are talking about this. So Amherst admissions dean Matthew L. McGann said that as a consequence of the Supreme Court's decision, the incoming class is not as racially diverse as recent classes have been. Oh my God, shocking, shocking. That it didn't just rectify itself. Thank you so much for making our institutions less diverse, you guys. Great job. So proud of you. But seriously, let me go on. He also said, other institutions have seen a similar impact, and all colleges and universities are evaluating the outcomes of this first admission cycle under the new legal standards. So I know these things can seem very nebulous. You say the Supreme Court ruled this and the Supreme Court ruled that. But in terms of everyday life, as we've seen with abortion, it changes everything. It changes the difference between whether a doctor will see you or not. It changes whether or not you can get into a university or not. And look, it's really tough for me to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you didn't get into like the most Ivy of Ivy League institutions. This is horrible for you. You dedicated 140 volunteer hours and were the head of the entire system is ridiculous. And what young people feel like they have to do in order to get into these institutions is actually the problem. But it always like tickles me a little bit when we're like, well, the problem actually is that there's just too many blacks. That's the problem. Why don't I have enough money in my bank account? Too many blacks. I had a hangnail in my foot. Why did I have a hangnail in my foot? Too many nignogs. Too many blacks. It's not actually black people. It's not immigrants. It's not men. It's not trans people. It's the system. It's the system. I pulled the mic away in case you're listening to this in the morning and don't want to hear me scream for the 30th time. It's the system. That is the problem. Okay. The important thing to note, though, is that I do believe there may be ways to recalibrate this. I think that the tricky part is, and when I say recalibrate this, I mean there are other ways to make sure that some kind of fairness is seen through, at least on some level. But it requires all hands on deck, and the reality of that is very slim. Like, we just talked about the fact that people are getting underpaid, undervalued, underworked, and now we're like, now come up with this new amazing system to ensure equality when it doesn't exist in any other context of our society. But Justin Driver, a professor at Yale Law School and an expert on the Supreme Court's ruling on education, right, looked to a model in Virginia and believes that there's potential in it. So this is what he said. It's a fine example of how universities can be creative, consistent with the Constitution to avoid the plummeting enrollment of black students that some universities have already witnessed. But he noted that many college admissions offices were struggling with how to respond without running afoul of the court's ruling. In the absence of innovation, Mr. Driver said, we stand on the cusp of what I fear will become a lost generation of black students at many leading colleges. So the system is, in Virginia is not something, new and avant-garde. It really is just paying more attention and putting in a couple more checks and balances. But again, black folks lost out so that Asian folks could make a point, largely, that wasn't made. Their numbers have not gone up. The real issue, of course, is all the obstacles and gatekeeping and truly legacies. Legacies are one of the biggest reasons for why people don't get in. Anyway, you know what? This could be its own episode. I gotta talk to y'all about Germany for a little bit because I'm being mindful of time. But I will say I am frustrated, but I'm feeling very hopeful. And, you know, there's a reason why Asian folks, first of all, there were stupid Asian folks out there like being like, this is ridiculous, like mad numbers being like, this is a terrible idea. And I want to be really clear about that. But there were a few that were very dogged about this. And to me, that shows the limitations of how our educational system and how we as a society talk about race in this zero-sum game where you lose because the other minority group got 3 people in. We've got to get out of this idea that if I win, you lose, right? Across marginalized identities. That's not how it works. The main issue is that the game is rigged and we're all caught in it, regardless of what body you were born into. If you didn't crawl out. I wonder where I was going with that. Yikes. If you didn't come into this world with like 7 0 digits behind you, sorry. Like we're all raw dog in life at this point. But, you know, so I'm frustrated about it, but I do understand why it happened. And I'm very keen on maybe rectifying it beyond the Supreme Court. I think I'm looking for solutions beyond the Supreme Court because I'm not seeing a solution for the Supreme Court and how unbelievably lopsided it is. Anyway, I want to say very quickly, I am paying attention to the elections in Germany that just happened this weekend. For the first time since World War II, a far-right party, right, Alternative für Deutschland, I'm saying that terribly, right, AfD, they became the biggest force in a German state parliament for the first time since, again, World War II. That means that Nazis did the Nazi thing and did the Holocaust, and then Germany was like, ooh, never again, for many, many years until this weekend. And then it's like, this party has been around for 11 years. This is the first time that they've seen success on a state level. So I am watching it. The good thing to note is that a populist left-wing, albeit very, socially conservative group, BSW, they also saw some success, right? This is a group that calls on for higher taxes on the rich, a tough line on immigration and asylum, and an end to military support for Ukraine. That's the left-wing branch. So I just want you to see how similar these things are. Think of the UK. Think of America and our Democratic Party and how they talk, right? Think about how this far-right party ran on what? Anti-immigrant. They ran on an anti-immigrant stance, right? And anti-Islam. Just take that in. What were we talking about in the UK again? They're anti-immigrant and they're anti-Muslim. What are you seeing in Germany? Anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim. What are we seeing here in the United States? Anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim. These systems work with each other and work around each other, and they keep us focused on each other, pointing the finger at you, and me. But never up, never up. Never at the powers that be, never at the system that creates these conditions and exploits the shit out of us and makes us so that we're working ourselves down to the bone with very little to show for it. So I'm watching it. I'm paying attention. They've also had reading about Germany was like reading about the UK right now. And to like the 3 people who listen in Germany, I got you. I'm paying attention and I'm on the ball. I'm furious. I'm actually it's unbelievable to me. And yes, this outcome has been predicted for months. Centrist parties out there were unable to reverse the trend. And thus we saw this AfD see some success. What's concerning to me, and we'll talk about this more, it harkens back to an older episode, but what is with this centrism? Why are we still having that conversation? It never existed to begin with, but now it's literally killing us. I mean, it's literally killing us. Anyway, that'll be its own episode. I'm clearly eager to just run out the races here and just get going on this week. But I wanted to talk to you about now, finally, this thing that should be heavy on all of our hearts. It's heavy on mine, which is the recent knowledge that 6 hostages have been killed. So over this weekend, 6 deceased bodies were found in a tunnel. These were hostages that were held by Hamas. And I think the most well-known, who reminds me actually of Meadow in terms of how he was discussed, like Meadow was the 19-year-old Palestinian TikToker who was murdered by an airstrike, making him one of the over 40,000 Palestinians who have been murdered by Israel. I'm thinking in this moment of 24-year-old Hirsch Goldberg Poland. And you might have heard of him. His family is one of the families that spoke on the stage at the DNC. So out of many of the hostages, he's perhaps the most well-known, and he has, been there since he's been in this state of Hamas control since October 7th. I'm going to tell you this. For anyone out there right along with me that is disgusted by Hamas and with Hamas, I'm a power mapper. That's what I do. I look at who's in control, who made the calls. And when I look at who actually had power to save Hirsch and the other hostages out there, it's Benjamin Netanyahu. Over and over and over and over again. And if you've been paying attention over these past 9 months or so, or even longer if you're me, the past decade or so, you know that responsibility lies completely with him. I'm not erasing the deeds of Hamas. But you have to understand that Hamas wouldn't even be in power if it weren't for Netanyahu and the Knesset choosing Hamas to be in power. It's Netanyahu's government that funds Hamas. So let me explain to you why I look at Bibi and say, this is you. This blood, Israeli blood, is on your hands, right? Benjamin Netanyahu, every chance that he's had to save these hostages, to get them back into the care of Israel, right? He has behaved grotesquely every time that he has been presented with an opportunity to secure their release. I'm thinking specifically of Hirsch in this moment, right? It's been endless negotiations to end the war and bring home the hostages, right? They've been grinding along this. You've heard it about every day for the past 9 to 10 months. And even though deal after deal after deal has been presented to Benjamin Netanyahu, he has been intent on stalling it. More than once this summer, the Biden administration brought Hamas and Israel within range of a deal to release the hostages and end the war. Now, some of us might be seeing this through very derisive eyes, and you wouldn't be wrong to. But if I'm I'm using the most neutral facts of all time, so you can see how damning this is against Benjamin Netanyahu, right? Deal after deal after deal. And every time they've been almost within range, right? What happens? In the moments where it looks like Hamas is about to agree, Netanyahu wrecks any possibility by insisting on new conditions to the terms. Americans were so frustrated, and this is from the New York Times, right? At different points in time, the American administration, so that includes not just Biden's team, but everybody else, they leaked documentary evidence of his intransigence to the New York Times. They literally provided Americans with proof for that, for why this is Netanyahu's fault. Do you get what I'm saying? The Biden administration leaked information to the New York Times to say, look at this, in hopes of creating more pressure. That doesn't mean Biden's out the hook. Absolutely not. Two bitches just yelling at each other exactly. But my point is, this is how dangerous this man is. This is not an opinion. This is a well-documented, fact-based reality. To Netanyahu, war is the only desired outcome, even if it means carelessly throwing away Israeli lives along with it, so long as he stays in power. Just as damningly, this is also from the New York Times, right? Yoav Gallant is Netanyahu's own defense minister, and he blamed him for scupping a deal. And scuppering a deal. That's how you know the New York Times wrote that. I'm like, scuppering? I looked it up. It's actually a great word. Anyway, so in a cabinet meeting this past week, Gallant excoriated, this is what the New York Times said, excoriated Netanyahu for insisting on new conditions that Hamas would never tolerate, right? Benjamin Netanyahu effectively guaranteed that the hostages would remain in jeopardy in Gaza. And let's be really clear, why some of these hostages were injured in the first place is because Israel just bombs Gaza left, right, and center without any regard for human life at all. It doesn't matter if it's Israeli or Gazan or Palestinian. It doesn't matter if it's aid. It doesn't matter if it's doctors or nurses or dentists or just humanitarians. It doesn't matter. You're getting blown up. And I'm angry. If I sound angry, it's because I goddamn am. And I have every fucking right to be. I'm so sick and tired of this. We're all getting the dance around, and we're all looking at each other and pointing at each other and saying, why can't you come up with a better answer than voting her? Why can't you come up with a better answer than sitting there yelling about semantics? And it's like, we all are getting swept up in decisions that were made decades before we ever were born, with administrations and governments that are unable to wrangle each other in, despite being some of the largest super military powers in the world, which makes them even more dangerous. Just like I mentioned before, it is everyday people that get swept up in this bullshit and end up getting killed so that Netanyahu can remain in power. Or so America can have a foothold in the East. We're being played. We're being played, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's everyday people who lose. And you know what? Those are the people that I care about. Those are the people that I'm most concerned with. And, Benjamin Netanyahu is maybe one of the most, I would put him up there with North Korea and Russia and everything else, one of the most dangerous, disgusting human beings on the planet. He's got gallons of blood on his hands. And I'm not a person who likes those sayings. I think oftentimes they're hyperbolic and not provable. But in this case, it actually very much is. It's direct. It's direct. Tens of thousands of people right now in Israel are protesting. Most of them are protesting Benjamin Netanyahu. He's an authoritarian government who severed any power the Supreme Court could have over oversight over him, and he kowtows to the most extreme far-right people in his administration. Let me explain what The Atlantic had to say about that. Netanyahu refuses to push, this is what they say, Netanyahu refuses to push toward yes being a deal because he doesn't want to face the consequences of agreeing to a deal that far-right members of his cabinet have vowed to reject. He's reverting to lifelong patterns of behavior. This is what his lifelong patterns of behavior: dithering in the face of a hard choice, excessive deference to fanatical political bedmates, and the elevation of his own survival above every other consideration. If you take a moment to pause, you will see that Benjamin Netanyahu represents precisely what a second term of Donald Trump would be. Those are all the realities of Donald Trump. Dithers when it comes to hard choices, excessive deference to fanatical political bedmates, and the elevation of his own survival above every other consideration. Benjamin Netanyahu is a cancer to humanity. He's corrosive, he's disgusting, and he's awful. Donald Trump is no different. These are not people who can ever take accountability for a single goddamn thing, and they're all terrified of their own bases. They create monsters and then believe that they're holding them on a leash when really they're just terrified that the second that they're off, they're going to get eaten up too. These are the worst kinds of men and the worst kinds of people. So to the family of those 6, I say, I'm terribly sorry that we're here. My heart is with them, and my heart is with Palestine. My heart is with Palestine because if Palestinians were okay, that boy would have lived. That's what we need to understand. That's our big takeaway here. If Palestinians in Gaza were safe, he would be alive. Hirsch would be alive today, along with 40,000 other people who are gone for no other reason than because they were Palestinian. So I'm sticking this through with you. We're going to stay on top of this, and I promise you, we're going to do something useful. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know what it is, but I promise you, we're going to find something useful to do because everything that we've done, everything that humanity has done, everything that we have achieved is because a couple of folks came together and decided that enough was enough. I don't know if we're going to figure out how to move great nations towards actual greatness, but I do know we can move people. That I do know, and I've seen unbelievable things happen. We're going to find a way to be useful. And we're getting closer and closer to it. What we're seeing, though, is a massive shift in how the world is seeing Benjamin Netanyahu. And if that brings us one step closer, then fine. But light a candle. Light a candle for our fallen. light a candle. Think about what it looks like 40,000 people. Think about those children. Think about those women. Think about those men. And honestly, the fucking cats and dogs, bro, and the birds. When I was walking around the streets of Palestine, there was just endless bird song. I don't know that I would hear that again now. So, to all of you, we're going to find a way to do something with what we know. And we know so much. We know so much. In moments, it feels like too much. But I'm telling you, there is a way that we're going to make ourselves useful. I feel it. I promise it. This is a heavy way to start the week, but honestly, take it. Take it in stride and say, okay, I can hold this because I'm not holding it alone, and you're not. You're not. We're holding this together. We're going to get through this together, I promise. So, with that, I'm sending you all love. I'm sending you all power. Honestly, if you want to get fired up, watch the Paralympics. Those niggas is serious. They are out for blood. They're out for blood. So, why don't we hit the VMs for that voice note of the day?
Hi, my name is Dana. I was just wondering where the name Future came from, and is there any significance behind it?
Yeah, I think I answered a question similar to this, but not exactly this. So I got the nickname Future because I got it in 2015 at the first ever Black Lives Matter convening in Detroit. And I very much look like Battlestar Galactica. I mean, I was bald-headed, just wearing just ridiculous. I mean, it was, you can only call it a tunic with what looked like a scuba diving material, hexagonal patterned vest. It was ridiculous. I felt like a star. And everyone just kept telling me I just looked like I walked out of the future. And, Battlestar Galactica became like a running joke. But then everyone just started calling me Future. And then I started to yap because, I'm a yapper and I was always future-minded. And they were just like, oh, yeah, no, future. This makes so much sense. You never shut up about it. And it turns out that they were right. I don't. I'm yapping about the future all the time. And I'm yapping about your future. And I'm believing in your future and our possibility. And that's what I'm all about. That and, I'm cute or whatever, I guess. I'm cuter than that guy, the other guy with that name. That's really the only thing I care about. I'm like, am I cuter than the other guy who has it? Then we're okay. We're fine. The last thing we need is to be tyrannized by two light skins named Future. So ignore the other one. I'm the one that matters. I'm the one that matters here. No, but what a great question. And honestly, that's kind of it. It kind of just stuck. And now everyone calls me Future or Fuchie or Fuch, right alongside Janaya. Call me both. I like them both. Thanks so much for that question. And, thank you all for tuning in again. We're in it. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to JFK Today. It means the world to me. The show really is a labor of love. We got new episodes that drop 4 times a week. We're everywhere podcasts are streaming. Do not forget, we want to hear from you. Drop us an email, your voice note questions to jfktodaysshow@gmail.com. I'm wearing my Princess Diana socks and my foot's up. Send us that note. Shout out to KR, Carolyn, and the JFK team, and shout out to you, the listeners who make it all possible. Peace.